Hi, and welcome back to the Straight and Found podcast. I'm Amaya.
I'm Ella.
I'm Josie.
I'm Miles.
And today we're going to talk about Wild by Cheryl Strayed.
Yes. So,
Spoiler warning.
spoiler warning. So the book is about this woman who loses her mother to lung cancer, and then her life kind of falls apart after that, and she divorces her husband, and then
Her family just kind
falls
of
falls
her
apart.
life is
She
just a
eats
mess.
her mother's bones later
Yep.
on.
Yeah.
But
And basically on this journey of self-discovery, she decides to hike the PCT.
It's the Pacific Crest Trail.
Yeah. She hikes about 1,100 miles. And it's basically this journey of self-discovery. And she goes through a lot and experiences a lot of things. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
all right. So
Okay, so one thing I found really interesting was the kind of theme of Cheryl being strayed, also hence her last name. Also kind of a little bit about Wild. The two are very closely related in this book.
yeah,
like
the
they,
wordplay.
Yeah, they're really connected, as seen on page 97, where Cheryl is explaining the reasoning behind why she chose her last name to be Strayed. And on page 97, she says, "I had diverged, digressed, wandered, and become wild. I didn't embrace the word as my new name because it defined negative aspects of my circumstances or life, but because even in my darkest days, those very days in which I was naming myself, I saw the power of the darkness. Saw that, in fact, I had strayed and that I was astray, and that from the wild places my straying had brought me, I knew things I couldn't have known before." So, Cheryl has kind of become, since her mother's death, she has become self-aware of how, like, she kind of broke and lost herself and hence became a stray. And she learns to embrace it and accept it as part of her identity, and she grows as a person from that. And her making Strayed her last name is just a reminder of that. The fact that she did lose herself and the fact that she's growing from there, and that, you know, being a stray and having strayed is just part of who she is, and she learns that that's just what you have, that's what it is.
Yeah, and she talks about, like, being, like, first she said, oh, I was lost in the world after my mother died, and then she recounts that, and she says, lost isn't the word, but more of, like, I'm bound to the world, more meaning,
So, yeah.
like, instead of being lost in the world where you're there, you just can't find your way
Hence strayed.
back, like you're strayed, and, like, bound is kind of like you're stuck there, and it's just, like, you're attached to it for no reason.
So one other thing that goes along with the name Strayed, when she gets that necklace delivered from her friend Laura,
Starved.
which looks like it says starved, it's kind of just like a funny little scene that happened to her because after hiking for so long she was super hungry and she was strayed, and it's just like, and
So,
it's,
like,
the necklace is all jumbled up, so it's also
Yeah.
kind of like a metaphor for
So it's
She's
like
both
her
starved
current
and
state.
strayed.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unintentional, but
It was
it
pretty
works.
funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, like, the title, Wild, and, like,
That
how it
goes
just,
along with being strayed too.
yeah, when I first picked up the book, I was like, okay, wild, I guess, because it's the
'Cause
wilderness.
She's in the.
But I kind of see now that I finish it, because it goes into the themes. So when her mother died, it was like everything was uncontrollable, and she was just having to, like, this unbearable thing was happening to her, and she didn't know how to deal with it. But the term wild is kind of referring to how at the end she learned that life is wild, and you
Yeah.
can't control it, and you never know what's going to happen next, and that sometimes you have to bear the unbearable, which goes into, like, how that's what she had to do. Was she couldn't carry the weight of her backpack, which was enormous.
monster.
Yeah, a monster. That was, like, over half her weight, but she still had to carry it.
Yeah.
And then she's, you know, being okay with not knowing, and then she's like, well, I have to cherish the now. And so, like, at the end, when she has, like, the whole thank you list of people, and it's very, like, gratitudinal. Is that a word? I think so.
Gratitude.
It is
Gratitory.
now.
It is now. I made it a word.
Okay.
And then she has the word it's miigwech, which means
What?
like very
Oh.
which means like gratitude and thank you. And I forget the language, but a native tribe that's in Minnesota that she learned when she was a little kid.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, it was in the ending on page like 315, I think,
Okay.
314. Yeah, and then so that. Just like that, like whole shift.
Yeah, so I feel like the title actually does relate to her name because as she is strayed, she wanted to conquer the wilderness in order to feel like she regained control of her life. So I feel like that's also another way in which the title is significant.
Yeah, so one of the main themes that I noticed in the book was the theme of worry and like sorrow and like this like huge weight that was like following Cheryl through like all the like drama that happened before this hike. Yeah.
Meeting all these people,
Doing all these
things on a rock
Yeah.
with Jonathan.
Jonathan. And
Heroin.
one of the
Opium.
yeah, she's interesting.
chewable opium.
Yeah.
Right. So, so one of the quotes that I thought like showed the power of worry over Cheryl was, I'm gonna read it now. It's on page 119, and it's the radical loneliness of the PCT had altered that sense. I wasn't alone in a room anymore, but the whole wide world. And now I was living alone in that world, occupying it in a way I never had before. Living at large like this, without even a roof over my head, had made the world feel both bigger and smaller to me. And I thought that this quote was like, just like as I was reading it, I was like, I can just like feel how like stressed out she is about everything, you know, like, I don't know, like, what do you guys think about that quote? Because like I feel like. For me personally, I was like, that is a lot to take on.
About her being alone.
Yeah,
that
like
one?
the feeling of loneliness.
The feeling of loneliness. Actually, I think that's another like big theme / motif.
Yeah.
In the story, where because she decides to hike alone.
Yeah.
And then she's offered to hike with other people, and then several times on several different occasions she's like, no, I want to hike alone. I know. She says she wants to finish the hike alone, finish it how she started it.
I feel like Cheryl, it's like it doesn't make sense, but it makes sense. It's almost like a paradox, kind of. I feel like so there's parts where, you know, she wants to be alone. She wants to go through this by herself. She wants to go on this self-discovery journey on her own and do all this stuff by herself. But then there are also points where she's like. And then there are also these points where she wants to be with people, and she you know, at like rest stops, for
like
example.
she misses like the physical
like when
feeling of being
It's
with
like
someone.
with Doug
again.
Yeah, like she misses those things, but there are also points where she wants to be alone, but she doesn't want to be alone.
Yeah.
At the same time.
She needs the crutch of a relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's very Cheryl to need
And
something.
yeah. So like throughout the story, you can tell that like she's like maturing and like this like
She's
in like
growing
her
and she's growing and
mentality and like
even physically too.
like and physically too.
Yeah,
like,
I noted a lot of times in the book where I was like,
Yeah.
oh,
Like,
Cheryl in the
her
beginning of
body
the show
is
would
like
have
a
never done that.
No, yeah, and I was like, you know,
Yeah, it's a mess.
it is a mess, but
But it's
also like
stronger
her
now.
legs
she's
and like
super
her
strong
arms
now.
and
Her
like,
willpower, too.
her
Yeah,
willpower.
her willpower.
Yeah.
She always had a very strong willpower.
and
though.
the way she feels about herself too. I feel like
Yeah.
She's more self-confident.
yeah, she definitely is.
Because
Yeah.
before she would always like, and I mean, I guess she still kind of did it at like all throughout because I think that's maybe like her personality. But
Yeah.
she always like sexualized herself and the people
Yeah.
that she met.
Yeah.
So like every time she met someone, she would always say something about
Like,
how
they're
they
really-
look hot or something like that. Every time she met
Or, like
someone,
he was kind of attractive.
I
Or
know,
something like that.
and I was like, okay, that's
Okay, Cheryl, you know.
That's
I cringed
everybody
a bit.
you meet, but like I guess that kind of falls into her wanting human
Yeah.
contact.
Yeah.
'cause when
Yeah.
you're alone for like
3
days
months.
on end,
Yeah,
dude.
she's been she's like
She hiked for 3 months.
over a
and then-
month, like over a couple months.
Yeah.
yeah, it was from I believe May to like mid
August.
September.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
September.
two days before her birthday.
Yeah,
Yeah.
her
Yeah.
birthday is September
She finished
17th, something like that.
Yeah, like mid September.
Yeah. She's a Virgo.
Yeah.
So going back to the theme of like worry and like her like how she has grown, one of the last quotes or one of the last quotes in the book that I thought showed like how much she has grown is on page 311, and it says that it was all unknown to me then as I sat on that white bench on the day I finished my hike, everything except the fact that I didn't have to know. that it was enough to trust that what I'd done was true. And I feel like these two quotes and the ones that I said before, like once again, it shows how much she has grown, and like the before and after of the hike. Like the first quote wasn't really like a before, but it was like in the very beginning of the hike, and like her mindset on life has changed because of the hike, and like how she like appreciates things. I feel like it's like shown to like
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
just
I
like
see
how
what
she's
you
grown
mean.
a lot.
And then also there was on page 311, she included this like metaphor about a fish that she was trying to get.
I think
That was
I
interesting.
remember that.
Yeah, I remember that too. It's on page 311,
I didn't
where
grasp
she
it that
says,
well.
yeah, it's like right after the quote that you just said, where it's like, to believe that I didn't need to reach it with my bare hands anymore, talking about the fish.
Yes.
To know that seeing the fish beneath the surface of the water was enough, that it was everything. And so the fish metaphor kind of like in the beginning, she wanted so desperately to get the fish.
Yeah,
But she could like see
She
it,
was
but
she
she
was
couldn't
doing
get
everything
it.
to get it. Like
Yeah, and then at the end, she kind of like, as I just quoted, she kind of like, she realizes that she doesn't necessarily have to have the fish, that it's okay to not have it and to
Yeah.
not know if you'll ever get it.
yeah, to kind of
And that's a huge character
also like
development.
the last sentence of the book had the word wild in it. Like
Yes,
believe
it
it-
did.
what
I
was
love
the
that. I was
I
like, title drop.
I was like, I thought it was just such a good way to conclude the book. Like, it started
Yes.
with, you read the
Yeah.
first thing you see is the cover. It says, in big bold letters, wild.
Big bold letters.
You
big
get to the
bold
end
food.
of the book. It says,
It says how
yeah.
wild it was to let it be.
it being,
Yeah.
so
It being the
it just is a
like
really nice,
everything.
it really is just a nice conclusion. I thought it was a really good way
So
to end
excited
it.
when that happened. 'Cause
I thought it was
I
just,
loved
I thought it was just such a good way to conclude it.
Yeah, like throughout the book, you notice small things like that sort of like similes, figurative language, metaphors that sort of
like, yeah.
continue to
How
like,
often she said Joshua in the beginning, kind of like
Oh, yeah.
describing how like monotone the whole journey was in the
Yeah.
beginning. I was
Like
just like
Joshua after Joshua.
just like that. I was so annoyed. But also one of the biggest metaphors that I found was her pack, which she dubbed Monster, like as she was going through her hike, and I feel like
big.
so big, like
It's
even
like literally and figuratively.
yes, all of the she compared it to a Volkswagen Beetle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's
which is
as
a
big as me.
car.
Like,
But I think it's a metaphor for her life, because as I said before, one of the themes was about bearing the unbearable. And so she started out as it's like, okay, she packs it all in, she can't move it. So she's like,
Yeah.
I know right there, I would have just been like, all right, I have time to go
Well,
home
oh
because I can't
well.
do it. But like,
Try your best.
She said she was like, no, I'm gonna lift this pack and I'm gonna take it with me. And so she gets on the floor like on all fours. She like does a deadlift to get it on her back,
I
and
know.
she's like
Yeah.
walking. She can't even stand up straight. She's like hunching in an upright position, which was
Remotely.
the title,
Uh-huh.
remotely upright position.
remotely.
And she says on page 44, she says something along the lines of like, yeah, no, it felt terrible, but that's what I guess that's just what
That's
it felt
what
like
I-
to be a backpacker.
That's what you just have to deal with, like,
Yeah.
while you're going through all of this.
Exactly. And so, so it kind of like shows me how she carried it, even though she couldn't
Yeah.
carry it. Like physically, she just
Yeah.
could not carry it, but she still carried it.
Yeah.
And so after a while, on page 92, she says about how it became like it started off as like this terrible entity, and now it's kind of like it's a friend now.
It's
Yeah,
like
it's a part of her.
She's named it. It's like it's Monster. It's a part of her.
She's
She
kind of
owns it
added
now.
kind of
She's
like a little bit
embraced
of
it.
humanity to
Yeah,
it. Like,
she's kind of like
and she even talks about it, like, there's like, like, being far away from Monster kind of feels weird. Like, when she
Yeah,
would go on these
when
trips,
she went on the
yeah.
with
What
I
was
forget
his
which
name?
page it was
Jonathan?
when she was with
Yeah.
Jonathan and he was like driving her down those windy
Yeah.
roads. She said
She's
that
like,
it felt
like incomplete, without-
uncomfortable
Yeah.
being away
Yeah.
from Monster.
And
Sorry.
then also when like Albert
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
had
tell you,
lightened
yeah.
the pack,
Yeah.
she was like, no, this is still really heavy and it still hurts like every time I take a step, and it's still like
Yeah.
way too heavy for me to carry. But you know what? I have to
Just
embrace
persevere
it. I
and
have to
persevere.
persevere, and I have to embrace it. And like, I'm gonna get stronger, and this is gonna get better.
Yeah.
And like, she has to carry it. and that's what she does.
That's
She
just
learns
what
that
it
she has
is.
to carry the uncarryable.
Yeah, and the load lightens as the book goes on, but it's never
It's like
light.
it literally
It's
is.
never light.
Yeah,
because
it's-
that's like
it-
how life is, you know.
No,
Yeah.
like my
As,
backpack
like-
is 3 pounds, and I'm like struggling.
I know. So much.
Yeah, and like when Albert helps her loosen her pack, it's like all the people that she's met up to that point. I think that was in Kennedy Meadows.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And like the people that she's met when like her pack is getting lightened, and like the people that she's meeting are helping her go through
The
this huge
feather.
life.
The
feather,
feather,
R.I.P.
R.I.P.
dog.
dog.
Yeah.
R.I.P.
R.I.P.
Oh yeah, wasn't that the feather of like a crow? Or
There's a
something?
crow
It
feather
was
of
the
a
void.
crow. The
It was
void.
symbolized
The
a void.
void.
It symbolized
Void.
the
Psychic.
woman in the
I'm a
bathroom
psychic.
said that
I'm also
Yeah,
a
she said it was
psychic.
something
voids
void.
give
Her
off
father
energy.
was like a
Yeah.
corvologist
Yeah.
or something like
Okay.
that, which is
Yeah.
the study of bird feathers or birds.
I don't,
Yeah.
Yes.
Or something
Right.
like that.
So, figurative language is a big part in this book. Like, a lot. There's so much figurative language. And one piece of figurative language that I found really interesting was on page 309, and it was a simile. And it said, it seemed like a miracle that I finally had the river in my sights, as if a newborn baby had just slipped finally into my palms after a long labor. And she's basically talking about, she's basically reached her final destination. She's reached the bridge of the gods. She's achieved her goal. And, you know, when you're in labor for hours and hours and hours, it's painful. It's exhausting. It's so, like, hard.
Draining.
It's draining.
It's draining.
So
I
hard.
wouldn't know.
It's so hard. It's so hard.
We wouldn't know.
Like, so basically she's showing that, you know, her reaching this destination is all of those things. It was exhausting, it was painful, but it's also, like, worth it in the end.
But you know, she was
for her.
sad to leave. Like she,
Yeah.
she stalled
I thought
a
it was
lot.
so sweet how
Yeah.
she was so sad to like.
You know,
Yeah.
she's, like, been here for months, and she was saying how, like, going back to Portland and having a TV, having a bed is all going to feel so weird. She's going to have to readjust to her
Yeah.
life.
Which I knew that would happen because it always happens when you're away for a while. Even like
Yeah.
a 2-week vacation, you get back and you're like, oh,
It's even, like, you know, like,
Yeah.
just readjusting to, like, you have to get back into routine. That's what you have to do.
yeah, you have to get back into a routine.
Because right now she has a steady routine of, like, oh, my tent and rain and water,
tent, rain, water,
purifier,
filter.
heroin.
She didn't do her
Bone eating.
Bone
Bone
eating, shade her mother's ashes.
Oh my god.
And also that goes back to, you know, the theme of, like, you know, cherish the now, and how at the end she was like, and thank you to everybody who I had met on page 315.
Yeah.
By the way, thank you to everybody who I had met on the trail, who I cherished everything with, where she says exactly, says about how most of the people I passed on the PCT only briefly made it through my life, but I was enriched by each of them. They made me laugh, they made me think, they made me go on another day, and most of all, they made me trust entirely in the kindness of strangers. And that's saying, like, she learned that you have to cherish who you're with and how, like, what is happening right now, rather than thinking about the future or dwelling on the past.
Okay. So now there is a very big role of literature in the book, particularly the
Yeah.
book Dream of a Common Language, which is one of the most important books, like, in the book.
In the yes.
A book in the book.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she had another book called the Pacific Crest Trail Volume 1, California, which served sort of as her guide in the
Guide,
trail.
yeah.
Yeah, so she, on page, I think, 60, she says, "It was true that the Pacific Crest Trail Volume 1, California was now my Bible, but the Dream of a Common Language was my religion." So Dream of a Common Language is a book by Adrienne Rich, and it's a book of poems. One of the most, like, important poems in there that we learned in the beginning is a poem called Power, which is sort of, like, empowering for her.
Super important to her.
Yeah.
And at the end, when she sort of lets go of all of her books, she burns them, by the way.
To
To,
save
to
weight.
get, yeah.
The one book
Because,
that she can't
God,
let
it
go
is a heavy
of
pack.
is the book Dream of a Common Language. She says that, "I opened the book and paged through it, leaning forward so that I could see the words by the firelight. I read a line or two from a dozen or so poems, each of them so familiar that they gave me a strange sort of comfort. I chanted those lines silently through the days while I hiked. Often I didn't know exactly what they meant, yet there was another way in which I knew their meaning entirely, as if they were all before me and yet out of my grasp. Their meaning like a fish,
Mm-hmm.
just beneath the surface of the water that I tried to catch with my bare hands, so close and present and belonging to me until I reached for it and it flashed away." So
Yeah.
This shows that Dream of a Common Language, especially, is sort of one of her crutches in the story, as literature is, and sort of symbolizes a place of comfort and also something that's out of her grasp, apparently.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Because there was a lot of flashbacks about how, like, the party scene where she eats her mother's bones.
Yeah.
Which was crazy, but sure.
Little chunky bones.
And then there was that one
whole.
scene with Paul.
Yeah. So, Cheryl, one of her techniques in the book, she does a lot of flashbacks. And, like, they work. So one of them is on page 257, when she's with Jonathan on the beach. Yeah. And it's the same beach that she was with Paul, like, before when they were married. And basically it's just talking about, like, you know, her and Paul on the beach when they were, like, a happy couple and they were together. And I just thought this was interesting because the way that she's using this flashback in particular is allowing the reader, like us, to see really how Cheryl has changed, like, mentally, physically, and, like, emotionally. Like, with Paul, she was, like a completely different person. Like, she was really different. And it kind of allows, like, the readers to compare and contrast. Like, now she's with this guy hiking the PCT that she doesn't really know, in the same beach that, you know, she and, like, this happily married guy that she was with, like, they were there together. But that's not the only reason she does flashbacks. I know that Ella had some other reasons she found.
So another, like, big thing that happened in her life after her mom passed away was her mom, like, was in love with this horse named Lady, and this it's like a few pages long. It's page 161 through 163, and it's just about Paul, Cheryl's ex-husband. Cheryl and her little brother Leaf went home to put down Lady because Eddie, who is her stepfather, like, said he would do it, but then he, like, I forget why he did it. He like messed it up and he didn't.
Shot it between the eyes, but it didn't kill
They
him.
thought it was going to be like a quick one bullet dead thing, but that is not.
Oh my
how it
god,
works.
that was, like, so traumatic.
So, they ended up having to, like, shoot the horse 3 times, which was
Yeah.
it was like a very sad scene. And
I was
very,
reading that and I was like,
Cheryl
like,
was,
the moment in her life.
Cheryl was
like,
hysterical.
she
Paul
was
had to, like,
hysterical.
hold her back.
touching like she touched the horse, like the blood was all over her hand as
Yeah.
she was, like, petting, like, and she's like, oh, it was so silky, but
It
there
was
was
so
blood all
sad.
over my
Yeah.
hand.
Yeah, and
It was, like, the last part of her mother that was, like,
there was the
alive
last part
that
of her
they
mother
killed.
that was alive, and, like, yes.
Okay.
Oh,
It's like finally letting her mother go by killing Lady.
Yeah, and, you know,
she's crossed
by
over.
killing Lady, her
Lady
mother
and
was
her mother
finally
are
allowed
really-
to get to the other
together
side of
on
the
the other
river.
side.
They were allowed to be together. Ooh.
Uh-oh. Okay, so
Yikes.
drugs
Are
become
bad.
a very important part, a very bad important part of the
Cheryl's
story
life.
before the PCT,
Yes.
pre-PCT, and it mostly has to do with this guy named Joe who she cheats on.
With
Paul.
I think was this after Paul?
No.
This
was
was
the
this
reason.
was during Paul.
This was
Oh,
during
okay,
Paul.
never
So
mind.
she cheats on Paul with
Multiple
this guy
times.
Joe, and
with
Well,
many
they
people,
weren't-
but
they
Joe was
were-
the main
mostly
guy.
They
Joe.
weren't legally separated, but they were separated.
Yeah, they were.
yeah.
Yes.
This
And-
heroin.
But after
addict.
they legally separated
Yes.
too.
Yeah.
And so Joe, he introduced Cheryl to heroin, and
Mm-hmm.
she became addicted with him. So there's a quote, sort of funny.
All his fault.
We bring it up a lot.
Oh my
It's,
God.
First we smoked it, then we snorted it, but we never shoot it.
But
But we
Absolutely
never
not.
shoot it.
Then we shot it. That
And
was
then
on
we shot
page
it.
53, by the way. And
BTW.
by the way, and she describes heroin as planet heroin, something separate from her normal life, but something that there was no pain. She said planet heroin, the place where there was no pain, where it was unfortunate but essentially okay that my mother was dead and my biological father was not in my life, and my family had collapsed, and I couldn't manage to stay married to a man I loved. This sort of
Strayed.
Straight.
She's straight.
Yeah, she's straight.
Unbearable weight to bear.
She
Unbearable weight to bury.
her
You mean
descri-
bear?
Bear.
Yes.
Okay, her describing heroin
As a
like this
planet?
sort of represents a sort of place of comfort for her where
A bad
there was
comfort.
no pain. A bad comfort,
You know,
but something that was comforting
don't do
for her.
heroin.
Drugs are an important part of like, drugs. And
Okay.
so I also found it interesting how she still hung on to Joe like
No,
for
she
a
did.
while.
She
clung
sent
to
he
Joe a
he
lot.
sent he sent
And he
him
sent her letters.
on the
Yes,
she never
and
responded.
She was like,
though.
"Oh, let's hope he gets off of drugs, and then maybe it'll be a happy ending."
Yeah, well.
Like I don't think he was like
Favorites of
a
a
terrible
lot of
dude
men.
I
because I feel like okay, I don't know. He might have been, but
we don't really know him.
We
All we
don't.
know
Yeah.
is that he was a drug addict, and he made her.
We don't know
become a
what he
drug
is
addict.
now.
And he has a mohawk.
we also know that they sort of
Probably
care about
he's
each
probably
other.
ugly.
Yeah.
Part of
Alrighty.
this trail trip was sobering up, and I feel like that succeeded, and also taking the pain away, but also sobering.
Helping it.
Yes,
Helping it. Yeah.
helping it.
We ran out of
Bye.
time.
We ran out of
So,
time.
This is half
thanks
an
for
hour.
listening.
This is
Thanks
half,
for listening.
This is
Thanks
a,
for
Straight
this is
and
a
Found.
I recommend the book.
Straight
It's
and
really
Found.
good.
It's really good.
Wild by Cheryl Strayed.
It's
Look
really
her
good.
up. There's a movie about her with Reese Witherspoon, and this book was nominated. Well, no, it wasn't nominated. It was one of Oprah's book club books.
club
that
Very
she
first
yes.
book club book.
I
She
mean,
was on
Oprah.
Oprah.
Oprah 2.0.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have fun.
Bye.
Bye.
Give
Bye.
her drugs. Bye.
Don't- okay. Bye.
Bye.